Hello, everyone, and welcome to our monthly webinar. My name is Justin Cooper. I'm a hard money lender, full-time real estate investor, coach, and consultant. Each month, we bring in some of our friends in the industry to share their expertise. This may be through a presentation, like when we talk about self-directed IRAs, title insurance, or we may simply interview our expert friends and dive deep into how they got started, where their investing has taken them, and what they see coming both for themselves and for the industry. I want to say thank you to everyone for making it to tonight's event. We know you're giving up some of your valuable time, so Adam and I will do the best to bring as much value as we can in the next hour. Now, this webinar is brought to you by Pine Financial Group. Pine Financial is Colorado and Minnesota's premier hard money lender. Pine focuses on the needs of Colorado and Minnesota real estate investors. And we're investors ourselves, and we know what it takes to get deals closed. Everyone at Pine Financial Group is dedicated to the success of its clients. We only experience success when our clients are succeeding, so we have a habit of telling you when a deal should or should not be done. And isn't that what you want from a professional in the industry, especially someone you trust as an advisor? You will benefit from our honesty and integrity when you choose to work with us. Now, tonight's webinar brings in a longtime friend and investor, Adam Adams. Adam A. Adams, also known as AAA, has educated thousands of investors through real estate conferences, radio and podcast interviews, his coaching program, and his thriving meetup group. In 2005, Adam took the plunge into part-time real estate investing, but it quickly became his full-time passion. Today, Adam is partnered in 7 multifamily syndications with approximately 1,400 doors valued at slightly over $100 million. He continues to grow his company's brand as one of the top syndication teams in the United States. Adam, I told our listeners just a little bit about you, but can you dive deeper and tell us a little bit more about who Adam A. Adams is before we get into the meat and potatoes of the interview?
Oh, I would love to. I would love to. And when you're put on the spot, you never know what to say. You're like, should I say that I was born in Utah? Should I say just real estate stuff? Should I talk about composing music? I don't know, but
I'd like
yeah.
to hear it all, man. Tell us how you wrote that symphony back when you were like 2 years old or something.
Oh, oh, let me tell you that. Let me tell you that because it can tie into the rest of this. And whenever you have a good tie-in, it'll work.
Absolutely.
So, when I was in junior high, not 2 years old, but I was in junior high school and I started learning how to play the tuba and soon after I started writing music. I started learning percussion and the clarinet and then I told my band director, I said, "Hey, I'm in 7th grade." And I said, "Hey, what do you think if I write a symphony and we could use the entire orchestra, all the instruments, and we could do a thing where your student, you play something that your young student wrote. Wouldn't that be cool?" And he just laughed at me. He just laughed and he goes, "You would have to learn every instrument. There's no way you could do that." And to me, it was just like, it was the word, how can I? And I got that when I read the book Rich Dad Poor Dad. I read the book Rich Dad Poor Dad, and it was all about how can I, not I can't, not this is holding me back. It's just let's figure a way, let's find a way. And I just said, well, how could I? How could I do that? So I learned all of the instruments, and I ended up writing that symphony, and we ended up playing it at the end of the year. I was in 7th grade, and that was really cool. It was a very proud moment for me. I wrote a whole bunch of other songs that year, and later on, when I was in college, we had this what was it? We had a student composition contest, and I couldn't find any compositions since I was outside of junior high. I could only find my junior high composition, so I pulled woodwind quintet out, and I won the student competition with something I wrote when I was 12, 13 years old. So
That's awesome.
fun stuff. But I think that ties into everything else that we talk about because people look at apartments and they're like, oh, I can't. I need to do this first. But to me, it's just ask yourself a different question and say, how can I? What's the way for me to be able to do this? If you're fix and flipping or want to fix and flip, let's just pretend like you don't have a ton of money. How can I? You partner with somebody and they put in a lot of the capital. You have a hard money lender. Pine Financial is apparently the best in the whole state.
You
and
better
in
believe it.
Minnesota, and in Minnesota. No, is it Minnesota
Minnesota and Wisconsin.
and
We're in
Wisconsin?
3 states.
I love that. So anyway, I guess it all comes down to how can I? So I grew up in Utah. I drove tractors. We had a farm. My dad was a real estate investor. So when I was just a kid, I was building houses. I was running wires. I was collecting rent at 8 years old. And so really that's how I got to where I am today, which is the $100 million of real estate that you just mentioned.
Awesome. Awesome. So before we get too much further, because I definitely want to dive into your first investing, which I think was taking place in '05. I just want to check in with everybody, make sure nobody's like yelling at me. My phone's not blown up. I just want to make sure everybody can see us and hear us. If so, drop into the question section. Just say, "Yep, I can see Adam. Love is what is that? What hat you got there? Is
It's
that
it's it's the Snowpack tap room.
bam?
So it's right next door to me.
Perfect. Awesome. Okay, so people are definitely saying they can see us and hear us. Beautiful. I just wanted to make sure. Just want to make sure. So, have you been doing more drinking with the beer hat on with this whole thing going
No,
on?
no,
No?
I've done almost
Well
no
done.
drinking. I used to drink more, and now I'm like I gotta cleanse. So I'm actually fasting today. Uh,
Oh, awesome.
so it's
Very
water
good.
only. No,
Okay, so
no
but if we see you
drinking,
pass
yes,
out, we'll
but
know
drinking
why.
water.
Fair enough. So, okay, let's back up to 2005. Uh, it says you got started in '05. What does that mean? Did you buy your first, 100 unit, 1,000 unit apartment building? Did you what'd you get into back then?
It's a pretty embarrassing story, actually.
Those are the
Because I
best.
was in college and I was thinking I'll never real estate invest, or maybe if I do, it's when I'm old and boring like my dad. And so I just thought that I wouldn't do it. And so my dad ended up buying me a piece of land that he got through a tax deed list. And then he mailed letters to all of the people and said, "Hey, for $100, I'll take over the risk." And my dad ended up buying it for $100, then giving it to me for Christmas in 2005. And the issue is that he made me pay for it, $100. And I was so mad because I was like, that's exactly what you paid for it. What kind of deal is that? That's not a Christmas present. But I did own a piece of America and just a cabin lot, 1 acre out in Aspen Hills Owners Association in Fairview County, Utah. Lot number 33, by the way. You can still look it up.
Perfect.
So I owned a piece of real estate, of a piece of America, and then not long after I got my first tax uh, bill, and I was like, "What?" It was like $150. So I was like, "Dad, do
Right.
I have to pay this? Like, it's more than I paid for the land in the first place." He goes, "Yeah, you have to pay for it. Like, that's normal." I was like, "I never knew that." So I paid for my taxes, and then the next year somebody offered me 12,500 for the land, and I was like, done. I'm not gonna spend another dime on this. So we got rid of that land. I got rid of that land, made a little bit of money. I was still in college I was about to graduate, and so this 12,500 happens to be my biggest year. My biggest year in my whole life, especially just when you're trying to put yourself through college. I mean, you don't make a ton of money. You got to just pay for the books, and that's about it. So I was like, that's better than any year that I've ever had, and I barely did any work. So that's my first deal ever. But it's why I read the book Rich Dad Poor Dad and why I studied Robert Kiyosaki and found out something that most people don't know. Robert Kiyosaki made his wealth. Well, he made his wealth in business, but he saved his wealth in apartments, not single family. So that was 2007 is when I started managing multifamily because I thought I need to learn how to do this if I'm going to do what he did.
Awesome. Awesome. So in '05, you get the tax deed lot, right? You flip the lot, and then so you start managing property. So did you own the property you were managing, or were you managing for somebody else?
The first property that I started managing was a 18 unit apartment community, and then a 4 unit, and then a condo, all for the same guy, Reed Quinn, my mentor, my apartment investing mentor. So I lived in the 18-plex. I moved into the 18-plex, and that goes back to the how can I stuff, because
Yeah.
I knew that that's what I wanted to do. So actually, I just called apartment owner after apartment owner until one of them said, "Yeah, you can move in, have free rent, and manage for me." And that was a hard sell. Like, I've never done this, and you don't even know me. I don't live there yet, but I want to live there. I want to live there for free, and I want to manage. So I had a lot of no's, but Reed said yes. So I started managing for about 1 year. That 18-plex he bought for $1,050,000, and within that year, I was the only manager that he ever had. He sold it for $2 million, and I was just like, holy cow! So it wasn't until 2008 that I bought my first multifamily.
Okay. And so what'd that look like?
It was a triplex
Okay.
out in the middle of Orem, Utah.
Uh-huh.
And still remember the address to that one too, 317 East, 400 South. In Utah, that's how the addresses are. The addresses are like just numbers. There's no street name except for State Street and Main Street. But 317 East, 400 South, Orem, that was my first multifamily. And I started underwriting just deal after deal after deal, just analyzing if these are going to cash flow. All I wanted was multifamily. That's all I wanted. And I said a duplex would be fine, a triplex or a fourplex, but I got to do one of those. And the interesting thing is I was making good money at the time. I was a handyman I was making netting about 20 grand a month, and I was fairly young. I was still in college. I thought that was awesome, like at this time. And so what I did was I thought that it was going to easily be a shoe in. My credit was high sevens. I was making great money, but I had only been making great money for 1 year. And so I only had 1 year of tax returns. And at the end of '08, when I was trying to close on that triplex, the banks had just seized up. It's too bad. Like, if I was trying to do this 2 weeks earlier, 2 weeks earlier, like, they would have given me 120% of whatever I wanted. But unfortunately, I waited just too long. And as I was trying to find a lender, I went to bank after bank after bank, and they kept saying, you need 2 years of history, not one, 2 years of history, not one, making this good money. Like, this is the first time I ever did well, right? And so here I was thinking, I'm totally screwed. I won't be able to do this. And I remembered, how can I? How can I? So I said, okay, well, I guess if a regular bank's not going to do it, I have to go and talk to a private lender. I've got to go find a private lender. I've never figured that out. Randomly enough, the first private lender I talked to said yes. No, I think I talked to my parents. They said no. Then I talked to the next one. They said yes. So Tom, I said, hey, I was a handyman. I said, I've been working on your properties for a long time. I've been doing a good job. I know you have a ton of money waiting, sitting there. So would you ever want to partner? Because I'm having a hard time finding a loan. And he said, absolutely. Randomly enough, like, but if he said no, I want the listener to know, I would have kept asking. I would have asked 20 people. It didn't matter, because it's how can I? Just got lucky on the first one. Tom said yes. We bought that. What he did is he bought it for $370,000, 370, a triplex. In Utah, that's normal. It's like Denver. And this was 2008. So anyway, he bought it, and then what he did is he sold it to me, made a mortgage to me, and then we had Virgin Money. Virgin Money. I don't know if you ever heard of them. You've heard of Virgin Records, Virgin, all these other
Uh-huh.
things, Virgin Airlines, but Virgin
Right, right.
Money, also owned by the same guy.
Okay.
He has a loan servicing company, so that's who we used. I paid my mortgage to them, and they gave him the money. So that was the start of my first deal. It wasn't so pretty, as you know. We're going to get into some other details on that one, though.
That's awesome. I mean, the part I love about, how you got the money is Well, I mean, there's several, but first off, you don't know unless you ask, right? I mean, that's like step one. What I like to tell people is if you don't ask, if you don't have that conversation, you're saying no for them, right? Because you're not even giving them the chance to say anything. You're just assuming it's a no, or you're forcing them to say no because they're not in the conversation. So just by asking, right? Maybe it's a no, maybe it's a yes, but it's definitely a no if you don't ask. So I love that you were asking. That's awesome. So let's jump ahead a little bit. I want to hear what is your best deal, and of course why. So walk us through what you think your best deal is. Yeah.
My best deal still has challenges to it, but my best deal must be the 16 unit that I bought in Bridgeport, Connecticut. It was like twin towers. So there were tall and skinny 8 unit and a tall and skinny 8 unit right next to each other. And so it was soon after we started taking mentorship for multifamily, for apartments, for commercial real estate. And so we started taking this education, and they told us, they taught us how they underwrite and how they make sure that passive investor money is safe. Because I had raised a couple $1 million before this, like just for private fix and flips and stuff like that. But on one deal, I had never raised the amount that we needed to raise for a multi-million-dollar apartment. And so here we were trying to buy this apartment. And the reason why I say it was the best deal is because we were really afraid. We hadn't done that before. We never proved this concept of syndicating a deal, having a private placement memorandum, raising a lot of money from several different people, and at the time we were just like, we needed a deal like that to show us that we could do that. So I remember we had only 7 investors at about 65,000 per investor, raised just a few $100,000, and because that was the down payment. And there was a lot of problems on that deal, a lot of mistakes that we made on that deal. We didn't raise quite enough money. We had to like come out of money with different things. You're supposed to take an acquisition fee. We actually put money into it instead of taking an acquisition fee. We should have made 300 grand. No, 30 grand. We should have made 30 grand. But instead we spent about $40,000. So it was a net difference of 70 grand at least. And so we learned a lot, but we said to ourselves, we can do this. Now we can prove it to ourselves that we know how to put this together. We learned a ton on it. And it's really what started me into now having 100 million in apartments. So that was kind of a big deal for us.
I love that. I love that. You're not necessarily focusing on the monetary, like why this is the best deal, but it's the best deal because it proved the concept, right? You're just putting in all this time and energy and probably money into the mentorship and the learning, and like, okay, that's great. Somebody else says that this works, but let me actually prove that it works, or prove that I can make it work. And that's awesome. So that's one of the reasons I think my first deal is one of my best deals. I actually lost $10,000 on my first fix and flip, but similarly, that catapulted me, now 13 years later, I'm still here, and doing stuff and loving real estate. And because we proved the concept on that first one. I love that.
Yeah.
So now that we talked about the best one, let's flip the coin there. Let's talk about maybe the worst one. So
the worst one. The worst, there was a couple close ones that would have been the worst. We backed out of 3 big deals, 200 units or more. And one of them, well, there's so many I can share. Which one should I even talk about? Let's just talk about the first one, the triplex, because I ended up losing money on it.
Okay.
Not a lot of money. I pretty much broke even. That's the truth. I pretty much broke dead even. I made a couple $100 a month, and then I sold it for a break even. I gave it away. I gave it to the bank for a break even. So ultimately, I may have made, I don't know, $200-300 a month, and that's it. But as far as the deal itself, I ended up losing it. So I bought it in 2008. I
Right.
used a private lender, Tom, and with that deal, there's some big issues that are huge learning lessons for anyone on the call that hasn't already started managing their own properties. When I was working for Reed Quinn on the 18 unit, the 4 unit, and the condo, he gave me systems, he gave me processes that I needed to follow. He paid attorneys to draft contracts that all I needed to do was say, here, sign this. And so I thought it was easy because I crushed it at that. I made this guy $1 million in a year. $1 million in a year. I couldn't hardly fathom it. So I thought it was going to be easy, and I thought I was really good at this. But I didn't want to spend money for attorneys. I was like, no, we don't even need a contract. The economy was so bad at the time that I was very vulnerable, and I was like letting anyone just move in. It's like, if you can breathe and you tell me that you could probably pay me, maybe you're in, like you're just in. So I wasn't signing contracts, and I wasn't vetting the people that were the tenants. And so it worked out for a while, but in about 2009, I had two tenants not being able to pay money at that apartment, at the multifamily. And so over time, I was just like, "Oh, this sucks. I made mistakes." And so I just took money out of my bank account and gave it to the lender. I was like, I'm just going to pay it and we'll get this part figured out. I said, we'll get this part all figured out. And another issue is that my my own job, my own handyman company, I had 13 employees at in 2007 and 8, but in 2009 I went down to two part-time employees, and I started getting a bartender's job because I needed to be able to make some money. And one of the employees lived in my apartment, and I needed him to be able to pay rent, so he was part-time. I had one other person that helped when I couldn't do it, and because I didn't want to lose him, great guy. And I did a little bit of work here and there, but I was more focused on bartending just to try to keep this going. And the issue is that I only had one tenant paying, and I was like forking out this money, barely surviving, and I didn't have the guts to kick people out. I didn't want to hurt people's feelings, and I didn't want to put them out while they were like out of a job, but like it could have all done better. All of this could have been done a lot better. And what ended up happening is it in 2011 was when everything was really hard for me. The economy was still pretty low, especially for construction and things like that. And I ended up one day, I don't remember the month, but one day in 2011, I was not going to be able to pay the mortgage. Like I had ran out of my savings completely. And I called up the lender, Tom, and I said, "Hey, Tom, like I don't know how I'm going to pay you." And he started trying to give me all these ideas, and I'm like, tried that, did that for months. Like I'm telling you, I'm at the worst rock bottom I could be, and I don't know how I could possibly pay you. And so he flew. He lived in L.A. or he lived in California, but not L.A. Somewhere north by the vineyards. Anyway, so he flies in, and we sign something called a deed in lieu of foreclosure. And he had this idea that, oh, we'll just do a deed in lieu. It's not a big deal. It won't be a foreclosure. It's not going to be bad. And like, I didn't know that it was going to affect me for years. It affected me for years, that deed in lieu. But I signed it and gave it back to him, and I felt like so relieved. I was like, I'm not going to have to lose money anymore. Like, I'm going to be able to start working on myself. So that was definitely my hardest deal. I've lost more money on other deals, but that was for sure my hardest one.
That's really interesting, because it sounds like if we take that all the way back to when you were first getting into that deal, when you're like, oh, I don't need attorneys, I'm not going to pay an attorney, right? And so with that first initial thought, jumping ahead now years all the way into like, I had no idea deed in lieu would affect me, because again, maybe you didn't have the ability to at that point, to be reaching out to an attorney, but it's like that same thought kind of circled all the way back around, and kind of caught up with you in a different way back then. Interesting. Interesting. And so I know we talked about, recently another deal that that didn't go quite as planned. So I want to hear more about that one.
Okay, good. This one will be super good for anybody who wants to buy out of state, because be careful. I'm not saying you can't make money. I'm saying it's harder than you think, and there's a few things to be super cautious about. The big lessons that you're about to hear is vetting your property management company better. And the other one is vetting the market better. And the third one will basically just be, don't go sight unseen. I've done so many sight unseen, and two of them really bit me right in the butt, and it hurt. It hurt really bad. And the one in particular that I want to mention is a fourplex in St. Louis, Missouri. The fourplex was for sale for 60 grand, and I made an offer for 55 or 56,000. And the seller accepted, and I saw that the income was 2,200 or 550 per unit. And so to me, it was foolproof. To me, I was like, I don't need to see this. Like, it's got 4 tenants in there right now. They're all paying 550, and that's 2,200. In a matter of 2 years, the whole building's paid for itself. I don't need to worry about going there. I got a screaming deal. And so I bought it. I actually bought it with a private lender, Beth Hale. Beth Hale, Beth. Beth's local. And so I called up Beth, and I was like, hey, I can give you 15% on your money. No big deal, because this apartment's making like 36% on like after expenses. And so like easily I can give you 15 and I'm fine. So I started paying a $50,000 note, 650 or 625, I don't remember. You could do the math and you'll tell me whatever 15% is, and 6 something a month. And then just within 1 month, I found out that the seller lied. Whoa, big deal. Like who would know? Who would know that sellers lie sometimes? What's going on with this? And so I was like, well, so they moved in a couple of people that they were just warm bodies. And so the seller like literally committed fraud. I had no idea that they committed fraud.
So what did they do? Did they not have like a lease in place, or did they say the leases with Bob, but really Steve was living there?
They just forged leases and told me that there was no security deposit. And then all of a sudden the tenant says that there was a security deposit. And I was like, so I had to actually pay out. Yep. And then the fraudulent property management company that I had on the first one, they were like, hey, it's going to be $6,500 to turn this. And I was like, that's a lot. That $6,500 is more than almost anything. But I guess if it's just one unit, okay, so I've paid the $6,500.
Yeah.
Second unit comes out, $7,500. They were like, oh, he did the 65 like it was nothing. Let's quote him 75 this time.
Right.
I was like, hey, look, I want you to finish that one before we start on this one. I want somebody to move in. And then there was a miscommunication because they got a hold of my assistant, Robin, and they said to the assistant, hey, we still need this. And Robin's like, no big deal. He's got the money. Paid it automatic. And I was like, okay, now I've got 2 units, $13,000 ish, 15,000. Is it 15? 14, $14,000 out of pocket, 2 units rented, 2 units empty. They said that it was all done. Uh, by the way, it never was done. And the work was never, ever, ever done. They said it was done, and all of a sudden they have a third tenant. A third tenant, they say, hey, we need to evict them. They're not paying anymore. They haven't paid in 6 months. And I was like, in 6 months or whatever it was, I don't remember, but it was a few months. And I was like, so you're just now telling me? And so then I told them, absolutely not. You may not evict anybody, like, because I don't want too many empty units, because I have owned a lot of units in Ohio. I've owned units in Tennessee. I've owned units in St. Louis, and I know how much copper goes for. And I know that my units are of the age where they definitely have a lot of valuable copper. And so I said, no, do not move anyone out. I don't care if they're not paying. Let's get these other 2 in before you do that. So they said that they said that they had it on the MLS and all these other places. And finally, I researched it. Never been on the MLS. I called them, questioned them, asked them, why wasn't this anywhere? And they said they put it on the MLS, but the only ad that came up was the ad before a previous owner had put up. They didn't know what was going on. It was a long story. I don't think it was true. So I fly out there. By the way, I still don't know that they never did the work, but I fly out there and I demand, I say, you're taking me there. And they're like, we don't dare to go there because we would get shot. And so you're going to have to go there on your own. I rented I asked for the cheapest car, by the way. I wanted like one of those small economy sized vehicles. They didn't have any. They only had a brand new white Chevy Tahoe, like with silver rims, and that was fine driving other places. But as soon as I got into that neighborhood, I was like, I don't even dare to have this car here.
Right.
So anyway, I didn't have to pay for the upgrade, so that was fun, but I did have to park this in front of like a really crappy fourplex that I didn't ever look at. So 3 years into owning it, I've been paying Beth Hale her mortgage every single month. Money got tight once, and I said, Beth, can I stop paying you for a while until this sells? And she says no. And I said, okay. I'll pay you. Don't worry. It's just not going to be able to come out of this entity. I'm going to have to pull it from somewhere else. So I did over and over and over and over. I need to get a referral from her. I need to get her to like sign something that says like Adam went through some time here and still paid me. So anyway, we go to the end. I go up the stairs and I see that it's taken apart. Like they started to do the flooring, but nothing else. Like I paid a lot of money for these units and the flooring was partially done and that was it. And so I'm raging. I'm thinking like I got taken advantage of, but all of this stuff could have been solved by making sure I was in the right market, making sure that I wasn't sight unseen, and making sure that I vetted the property management company. This property management company, Top Property, I think, look it up, never use them. I think it was called Top Property in St. Louis. Do not use them. I would have found a whole bunch of bad reviews on them, right? And I didn't think to do that. But it was interesting when I was trying to get rid of Top Property, no other people would take over. That's the whole reason why I had to fly out there, because like everybody else is like, oh, we won't manage in that neighborhood. We won't manage in that neighborhood. And apparently Top Property just wanted to collect. I was paying Top Property every single month, even if they didn't collect money. So there was a lot of issues, but let's fast forward to the very, very end. We try to sell it. Corey Boatwright's a good friend of mine. He does a lot of wholesales. He couldn't even find me a buyer for this fourplex. We had it online. Nothing. I mean, Corey could have found a buyer, but like we couldn't do that.
Right. Yeah.
I eventually, man, I wish I remembered the exact amount. This was only a couple months ago, but I think we sold it for around 40,000, and we paid commissions for not a 3%, 6% commission. No, when the prices are that low, it's 10, 15% commissions, just FYI. So we sold it for around 40 grand, 35, 40. So all in all, I wrote a check. No, I didn't write it. I didn't write the check to Beth. I wrote a check to my title company, or I wired something like $20,000 to the title company so that they could give Beth her full amount and pay the real estate commissions. So I lost a crazy amount when I was closing on that deal. But when you add it all up, it wasn't that I lost 20 grand, right? I also lost the difference, plus I lost all the work that I had put into the property. So I think that one I lost something like 40 to 60 grand easy, like easy on that property. So a lot of learning lessons there. I will always see my property for now on. I was always do market research for now on. And the most important is your property management company by far.
So those are three interesting bullet points. So let's chat about that. If you had seen the property, what would have tipped you off and maybe scared you away? Like what would you be looking
The
for?
next door neighbors, the across the
Like,
street neighbors,
yeah.
the I'm walking in, I'm not walking. I'm not walking. I was envisioning somebody walking. I'm driving through the neighborhood and it looks like people are on drugs, like everybody's on drugs in that neighborhood. Like people they have all the wounds on their skin. They're not looking very pretty. They haven't dolled up in any way. Many of them are limping. Don't know why they're limping, either to look cool or maybe they got shot before. I'm not sure, but many of them are limping, and I was scared. I was really
Yeah.
scared in that neighborhood. I definitely wouldn't have cared about the numbers anymore if I was in the neighborhood. I would have been like, nope, I just can't do it. So
Yeah.
there's your answer for that one.
Yeah, so you're looking not necessarily at the house. It's not that you had to have, somebody in the house and like, oh, well, there's structural damage or something like that. It was just the neighborhood feel is really what you were going for, right? So it
Yeah.
wasn't an A, a B, a C neighborhood. This was like a D, E, F neighborhood, right?
Yeah,
Like
D or
it
an
was
F.
just like a
A
war
D or
zone,
an F.
right? Like, yeah,
Yeah,
you're
I would
just
say a
not gonna
solid
go
D
there.
minus. I had friends. I had friends being like, "You're selling it for that price? Let me have it. Let me buy it. I'm looking for one." I'm like, "I would not sell this to you. No." And they're like, "Please." Like, there's no way you would get me to sell this to you. I can't.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
D minus. D minus.
and so that's huge, right? Because we can walk a neighborhood with Google Street View, but that's not necessarily going to give us that same feel as actually being boots on the ground. And so whether you get on a plane because it's in a different market that you don't live in, and walk or drive, or drive
Yeah,
by
drive,
the neighborhood,
drive.
um, or if you have like somebody local, boots on the ground type thing, right? You got to have that local knowledge, right? I mean, we hear about these things, neighborhoods are kind of block by block sometimes, but I mean, there's also some places, across the country that it's just entire massive neighborhoods are just war zones and you just don't go there, or I mean, some people obviously do, and some people own these properties, but it comes back to what's our comfort level, right? Obviously this was outside of your comfort zone, but you didn't know that because you didn't step foot in St. Louis, you didn't step foot in this neighborhood, you didn't have somebody you trust going in there. So that's
Yeah,
that's
well,
really interesting.
Vern Harris owns in St. Louis, and he just said, "What's the address?" And I told him the address. He goes, I don't think you're going to want to buy that. I think that's in one of the really bad areas." And I didn't listen. So
Yeah.
horrible of me. Vern is, he's a good friend. I mean, I should have easily trusted him. But the numbers were like making me need to do it. 2,200 for only 50 grand. 2 years, completely paid off.
What's the three most important things in real estate? Location,
Location.
location, location.
Yes.
Yeah, that's another great point though, right? The numbers. So much of what we're doing is an investment. We're trying to make money. This is an investment. What do the numbers say? But there is that intangible sometimes of what is the neighborhood look like? What does a property look like? Sometimes it's the flow of the property, the feel, the openness or not openness or whatever it is of the property itself, or it's just the neighborhood. It's just it's not the right feeling. It's not what you're looking for in that investment, and doesn't matter what the numbers are. It's not going to make up for those types of things. So
Yeah.
step one in your due diligence when you're going to the property is not look at the outside. What does the roof look like? What is the neighborhood? Before you even get to the property. Hugely important. So love that takeaway, because I think so often that's overlooked. Nobody's thinking about, well, what does the neighborhood feel like? And
Mm-hmm.
that's before you even get to the property. So maybe similarly, like the market itself, is St. Louis a no-go for you, or was it this neighborhood of St. Louis?
Well, for me, it's a no-go, but it doesn't mean that the whole city is like that. If in St. Louis, there's really good neighborhoods, there's really safe neighborhoods, and so if that's where you are, then I think you're going to be great. Uh, but for me, St. Louis is a no-go, not because I'm telling other people not to go, but because we're extremely cautious on market selection, and we need a lot of metrics that aren't found in a lot of the places where people like there's these metrics that people can't find in parts of Ohio, parts of Kansas, parts of Oklahoma, whatever. There's some neighborhoods that people chase numbers, but those markets don't make sense to us because we're looking at schools, huge, huge, huge deal. We're looking at crime. We're now now we look for these things. Now we look for schools and crime, because I can tell you the first 23 properties that I bought were not perfect when we put all this stuff in. So schools, crime, job diversification, job growth, population growth. By the way, most of the cities that you guys keep wanting to buy in have population stagnation or population decretion, right? So you just can't buy there, because like in a few years' time, your investment is going to be worth less than it is today. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff we look at now, and nothing in St. Louis, it makes sense for what we look for. But I don't want to like have anybody on this call making me try to have them think that I'm saying don't go there, or that if you already own there, then you're a bad person or something random like that. It's just we're really careful now, and it came because we've gotten hurt a lot.
Yeah. So that's something I talk about with my coaching clients a lot, is um, knowing what you're looking for, right? And then knowing how to analyze it. So, I mean, the metric of crime is there, right? I can look at this, but for Adam, his threshold is here, and so it has to be, less crime, or a better neighborhood than that. But for others, their acceptance is somewhere different. So it's not only knowing what to be looking at, like schools and crime and population growth, but like what is my threshold, right? What's the minimum I'm willing to do? And so not just knowing what to be looking for and where do I find that metric, but then how do I analyze that metric and how do I know if it hits my goal? That's hugely important, right?
Yep.
And so that I think speaks to the success that you have had, is that I now know I need to look for these things, and I know what the minimum is that I'm going to take for this, right? Because if it's less than that, that's a hell no, right? It's just not even
Yes.
it's not even worth looking any further. So hugely important. And then so the property manager, this is really interesting. First off, when you got started, you didn't have a property, you were the property manager. So now you had a property manager on this property, right? So that's a change there. So was it that that you didn't have experience managing the manager, or was it just, not
Mhm.
having done enough diligence with the manager, or kind of how did you, was it just a package deal? And if I'm going to buy this deal because it has amazing numbers, it's a
Yeah.
package deal. The PM comes with it. Boom. I'm just saying yes because of the numbers.
Yeah, we chose the property management company because based off of what the wholesaler who sold the property to us suggested.
Uh-huh.
He's a current friend of mine, and that's one of the saddest moments of his life. He can't believe that he ever put anybody there, um, which I think is interesting because what I would normally tell people is that the best way to hire a property manager is by referral. Um, and in general, I would say that that would be the way that you would knock it out of the park. But this day, this time, that worked against me. Um, so if I had to do it all over again, I actually think I would have hired the same property manager because I had a referral from somebody that I trust. And it's just that he didn't know at the time what was going to happen with them and what they would do, and he was new at wholesaling, and I didn't think about that. So I guess best way to say it is maybe instead of getting a referral, try to get multiple referrals for so that there's one. Try to get at least 3 people to tell you who to use, and then call all 3 of the places, or if they're all the same one, you're probably good. But call all 3 of the places, vet them, and ask them for references. And I think that's going to be a helpful way. But the interesting thing is that I couldn't even get another property management company in this neighborhood. Like that, they were the only one who was going to do it. Um, so that should have been a sign. I didn't realize at the time. But if just for a takeaway for a listener, just who needs to know how to really solve the problem, get multiple referrals. Number one, look up reviews online. 2020 is an amazing year. Much. There's a lot of tools at our hands. And what I look for now in property management companies is different because I'm looking at assets that are 200 units or so. And so when I look for property management companies now, we spend a lot of time. Like we spend a ton of time just researching, calling, interviewing, meeting in person, and looking at reviews and asking people in the neighborhood. So what we'll do, here's a cool trick that I just remembered. Um, just if somebody's doing something similar to what we do, it's really difficult to get a good broker to take you seriously in my industry. When you're trying to buy multi-million-dollar assets, their brokers they're really serious. They're really cutthroat, and they don't give everybody a chance. So here's the process. Very easy. When you're buying multi-million-dollar projects, call the brokers and ask them don't talk about anything except for asking who the good property management companies are. Get off the phone with them. Now call all the property management companies. Select the best one. Now call the brokers again and say, I've got the best one, I've done all my research, and I know exactly who's going to manage my asset. Because the brokers, in the kind of what I do, the brokers will not even show you a deal unless you have that. So call the brokers to get the property managers, and then call the property managers and go back to the brokers once you've have something completely settled. Good advice for anybody in commercial.
Yeah, I love that. That's interesting. And so just last month, 2 months ago, I had a property manager on more for the single family stuff, and we spent almost a full hour talking about how to, select a property manager, how to vet them, how to onboard with them. And so if anybody's looking for more of that stuff, especially on like the single family or 4 units or less, and more residential as opposed to commercial, definitely, go to Pine Financial's YouTube channel. We've got a ton of great videos and stuff on there, a lot of great content, but also that's where all these webinars are. And you can definitely look up that one. A lot of great info there. Or just reach out to me, and happy to put you in contact and send you a link to that stuff. But you're talking about in the business that you're in. And so I want to hear more about what you're doing now. So you spend a lot of time talking about the beginning, talking about like the smaller residential stuff, but you don't have 1,400 single family homes, right?
No,
So you're
no.
into like bigger multifamily stuff. So I want to hear more about what's going on in your business today. Like what does Adam Adams Blue Spruce look like today? What are you focusing on? And tell me a little bit about that.
So we focus on apartment communities and 200 or so units. They average about 200. There's bigger and smaller, but um, what we do is we buy C-class assets. So C-class, there's A, B, C, D, and
D
F.
minus.
Yeah, D minus. So C class is going to be more workforce housing, 1980s, 1990s, and it's going to have rents that are um, fairly easy to achieve, and the the amount of deferred maintenance on our properties is there's more than there would be if you were downtown Denver. I know a lot of your listeners are like in Denver, so just think downtown Denver, where the cranes are, where they've built just a brand new skyscraper, a brand new apartment community. That's definitely going to be an A class. It's definitely going to be an A class. The B class is going to be something where they're 5 to 15 years old, and the C class is going to be where they're older than that. They're usually like 1990s, even some 80s. So in Aurora has good and bad. There's good and bad in Aurora, but I'll just say like in the nicer parts of Aurora is what I'm talking about for a C class apartment. So those C class that are those apartments that look good, they look like definitely livable. You would probably be okay and comfortable to live in them, but they're not like a $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 a month single bedroom. They're going to be more in the 1 to 2,000 for the 2 to 3 to 4 bedrooms. So that's kind of what we're looking at. But because they're not in Denver or Aurora or whatever, the rents are a little bit less. So this is really important. Write it down if you're ever looking for this. There's a lot of data that shows that you should always have above 700 rents, always have above 700 rents, and usually below 1,100 rents. So that's the big number where if you want to know, can I really achieve my pro forma? Pro forma means can I achieve my goal? Can I achieve what I want? So if you're going to buy a fourplex or a fiveplex in St. Louis and the rents are 550, you already know you probably shouldn't buy that because you want to have at least 700 rents. So if you're looking in Oklahoma, if you're looking in Ohio, don't go for those 300, 400, 500 rents. Like you will not make money. The numbers look enticing, but the data will show is if it's at least 700 to 1,100, you're probably going to hit your pro forma because the turnovers are a better amount per the rent. Like when I had that 550 and I had to pay 7,000 to turn over a unit, that was 12 months. That was 12 months. It took a whole year away. But when you're doing this with apartments with units that are 1,000 or so, it's going to be good. So yeah, that's what we look for. We look for value add. We want to find something where we can maybe turn it from a C to a C plus, or we can turn it into a C with deferred maintenance to a nicer C class apartment where people are happy to live. We do things like we add a lot of cameras, and so we'll be able to always know what's going on. Those cameras are a huge deterrent for crime. We do things like add gates. We turn it into a gated community where people have to use a card to get in, and that makes people feel a lot safer. It brings more families there. We do things like just paint a reserved sign on the curb. This is so easy. We paint reserve signs on the curb, and you can usually do about 20 to 30% of your residents, we call them residents instead of tenants, but 20 to 30% of your residents will prefer to be able to have the same place where they park every day. And if somebody parks in their spot, they can be like, I'm going to call the tow truck. You know, they feel really good about that and not being confused like we are at the supermarket, like, where did I park? We're at the airport. What level was I on? So this doesn't happen when you give them a reserved parking. So 20 to 30% of them easily will pay $30 to $40 a month. And what you had to put out of your own pocket to pay for the materials and the labor to paint something that just says reserved is very minuscule. It costs you maybe $5,000, maybe $5,000. You have a huge apartment. You've done this to a lot of different units, and you're out $5,000. Well, every single month on 200 units, if you have, let's just say 200 units, I'm going to do the math. I'm just going to do the math real fast. 200 times $30. Actually, let's say 200 times 30% of them times 0.3 times $30 a month times 12 months, 3,600 divided by a cap rate of 7.07. You spend a maximum of $5,000, and what you get back is $50,000 in value to the property day one. 51,000 just from painting some stuff. We also do things like with laundry, like either just adding laundry hookups, or if they already have laundry hookups, sometimes we'll rent out laundry, like a washer and a dryer. We'll bring it up, and I know it's crazy. It would only cost them maybe $1,000 to have a washer and a dryer, but they're willing to pay $100 a month. In 1 year, they've paid more than the amount. It's insane, but we do it, and it makes us money. It makes our passive investors money. It's something
And
called,
your residents are happy. I mean,
yes.
that's the other thing, right? Like your retention is going to be higher, you know,
Yeah.
and they're happy to do these things. That's awesome.
Yeah. So that's what we do. We do syndications on
So
200 units.
tell me about syndication, because that seems to be like a buzzword I've been hearing
Mm.
all over the place for a while. So tell us a little bit. You know, I know our hours, you know, quickly coming to an end, but I want to hear more about syndication. What does that mean? What does it look like? What are the moving parts associated with it? Because, you know, being a syndicator doesn't necessarily mean you're buying multifamilies, right? It's like part of the process, in my understanding.
Yeah.
So I want to hear from you, like, how would you describe it? Tell me about that.
Yeah, you can syndicate anything. Like you can syndicate plays, like you know, Broadway plays. You can syndicate you know, racetracks. You can syndicate any type of asset, you know, that you want. The syndication process is basically that we pay an attorney to draft documentation that allows us to do something similar to what Wall Street does, raise money from other people legally. Now, if we wanted to do exactly what Wall Street does and have the exact same rules as Wall Street, we could probably raise a ton of money and have a lot of exposure. So these exemptions that we file, it's called Regulation D. It's an exemption from doing what Wall Street does. And so it's called a private placement memorandum, a private placement, not a public. You're not taking your company public, but you're still able to legally raise money. What most people don't know, and I'd be happy to talk to anyone on this call because I'm really passionate about raising money legally. And a lot of people do fix and flips wrong. A lot of people do a lot of things wrong because they just don't know the law. So for the syndication, what we're doing is we get an attorney to draft it to prove that we don't have to register a security. So we're having an exemption from registering a security with the SEC. And so with this exemption, there's two main ways. There's two main ways to do this. There's a lot more, but these are the two that people use. And I know that Pine Financial raises money in one of the ways, but it's not one of these two ways. I think you do Reg A, and the most common ways are not Reg A like the music. I know what you're thinking. Regulation A, And so what we do is either Regulation D 506B or Regulation D 506C. Easy way to think of it: B is in buddies, C is in community. Okay, C means you're out there in the whole community. You can tell anyone you want as long as you follow some guidelines. B is your buddies. As long as you don't tell anybody else, you can raise money from your friends. Just your friends, your family, people that are close to you. So B is in buddy, C is in community. If you want to do the C, then you're able to advertise, you're able to do all these things. So that's kind of the legal part of syndication. And basically what we do is we find a deal, we analyze the deal, we underwrite a deal, we walk the deal, and then when we decide that we want to close on the deal, then we'll get our attorney to draft the private placement memorandum. It costs like 12 to 20,000 usually for that part. And once that's done, then we will go live and have webinars and tell passive investors that they could be a part of this deal. Maybe they'll put 50,000, 65,000, whatever. We'll have a lot of different people putting medium amounts of money, and then we'll basically raise 6 million or so, and then buy a $15 million project, and most of the money, almost all of the money, comes from a whole bunch of passive investors that legally invested in this deal, and they become the LPs or the limited partners in the deal. They own equity. They're not just putting debt down like Beth Hale did for me when I bought that fourplex. They actually own part of the deal, not just a note, right? And then we are the general partners. We run it, we operate it, we manage the manager, and that's really the process of closing on a multi-family with syndication.
Gotcha. And so the passive is because, as opposed to you actively managing it, going out and finding the project, that's more of the active side. And the passive is, okay, I like it, I want to invest in it, I'm going to cut you a check, and then I'm going to sit back and then have the check start rolling in, so to say. So it's more passive. You're not,
just like people can own part of Coca-Cola, but they don't have to do it. Like they invest in Coca-Cola. They want to see Coca-Cola succeed. They believe that Coca-Cola will continue to grow, and so they feel like it's a good way to put their money. They're passively investing. They don't do any of the operations. They're passive investors. It's the ultimate, like, where we all want to be, is
right,
making money off of other people's time.
Right, exactly. Yeah, have our money just make money, right? Exactly, and have from other people's time. I love that. All right, so let's start wrapping up here. Couple somewhat short, quick questions here as we wind down here. What's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
My mom said that I can do it, and I think that that's good advice.
Okay. All right.
You said be fast, so I'm just saying, like, believe in yourself. Believe in yourself.
Yeah.
You can do whatever you put your mind to, and that's helped me a lot in life.
Perfect. I love that. Can you share one of your personal habits that you believe has contributed to your success?
Yeah, one of the habits that has contributed to my success would probably be practicing gratitude. It has to be a conscious thing for me. I guess other people are just way positive, but for me, I wake up in the morning and I think about all the blessings that I have, what has happened to me, all the friends that I have. And when you come from a place of gratitude in all that you do, nothing else really matters, and you're able to be more clear in your head. So that would be a huge thing for me. Gratitude and exercise.
And exercise. I like that. So are you, is this literally when you first wake up, the alarm goes off and you're just laying in bed? Do you get up? Do you have like a journal or something like that you use to help with this?
I've never journaled. They say you should. I have a good friend who wrote a book called Miracle Morning. He talks about journaling. Hal Elrod. I was texting him the other day, and I was just like talking about his podcast. He's got a podcast. He talks about journaling. I can't. And I finally told him, hey, I finally read your book, brother. Like, but I always have practiced the gratitude, but the journaling, I feel like I could never do. I'm dyslexic. The the process of writing is hard. I could talk. Maybe if I did a vlog journal, it would help me. But no, I've never journaled unless required by my teachers. But when do I do it? I do it almost every morning, almost when I just wake up. Before I get out of bed, I close my eyes or open them sometimes, and I just say like all the things that I have, what I'm grateful for. And then the other times that it comes up is when something's really stressful, or you just lose 40 grand on a fourplex that you thought you were gonna, make a ton of money. Is you just think about all the lessons you've learned, how the gratitude that you can still survive another day even after losing all that money, the gratitude that you have for your podcast listeners, for your whatever. Like there's so much to be grateful for, and I do it almost every morning, but I certainly do it if things get really stressful too.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Um, do you have an internet resource like a Dropbox or something like that that you love and that you'd be willing to share with the
Yeah,
listeners?
Calendly is one of my favorite internet resources, where it used to be stressful to try to schedule something where you like by the time the person replied, that time's no longer available because someone else got it. So Calendly helps because it integrates with your calendar. It won't schedule something against what other times you have. And it just solves all my problems for my coaching clients, for my podcast, everything that I do. I have like lunches with passive investors. Somebody wants to go and have a lunch with me and get to know me before they invest. I've got one place where they can do whatever they want and they can schedule that and it automatically happens. And I live and die by my calendar. So Calendly has solved a lot for me in my life. Being one of those entrepreneurs that a lot of the people on the call have this too, where they're going a million miles a minute. They want to be the visionary and not like, okay, what about this time? That slows us down. So Calendly literally makes me make more money.
Yeah, I love it. I use Calendly as well. Super slick. It integrates, I think, with Zoom right now, which is all huge, right? Especially everybody working from home. I mean, it's a cool resource, and for the most part, I think it's still free, right? So, and if not, it's probably worth a couple
It's
bucks.
free. It's free unless you get like a pro version,
Yeah,
which I told everybody that I have multiple things. You can't do that with a free version. You can only have
that's what
one.
it is.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So looking back, what advice would you give yourself when you were just starting out?
I would have probably started in 2005. I mean, I owned one thing in 2005, but I probably would have like gotten more serious about real estate in 2005. And I mean, I think that that's a good thing for everybody to hear. Like, we're in a, a market decline right now. And if you don't already own, now's a really good time to start doing stuff. If I had to give myself advice, it would be to go all in earlier. And so for anyone on the call, go all in, use Pine Financial as your lender, make sure that you can close on these deals. You don't like my commercial?
I
You're
love it.
laughing at
Keep it
me.
going. No, I'm loving it. Keep it going.
All right, all right.
Awesome. So can you recommend one book? Uh, what might that be? If you could recommend one book to someone right now.
It depends where they are. If they've never read Rich Dad Poor Dad, they must. And if they're pretty far into their business, then starting to read Traction, EOS, and Rocket Fuel will probably help you a lot. They're
Awesome.
all written by Gino Wickman. So just write Gino Wickman, find his stuff. If you're far into your journey, those will really benefit you a lot.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Well, Adam, appreciate you spending the time with us. A lot of folks on the call listening in. Really appreciate it, especially with everything going on in the world right now. You joining us and sharing your journey, and being open and honest about the headaches and hurdles that you've come across in your business. Really appreciate that, man. Wish you all the success in the world. It's been an honor watching you, grow and take off over the past couple of years, and I can't wait to watch you keep growing and continuing. So, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate you coming out. Thank you everyone for listening. As Adam was saying, if you need some hard money, Pine Financial will be happy to be your lender. Love to talk to you. Feel free to reach out anytime. You can go to pinefinancialgroup.com. You can email me directly at justin@pinefinancialgroup.com. If you're interested in getting into residential rentals, 4 units and less, I do coaching and consulting on that. Adam, you were saying with your coaching clients, you take folks on in a similar fashion for multi-unit stuff, I believe. So reach out to Adam if you're looking for the bigger commercial stuff. And if we don't hear from you soon, we will see you next month on the Pine Financial webinar. Thanks, Adam, and thank you everyone for joining us tonight.